الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. جزاكم الله خير for having me again for your I don't know if it's weekly or monthly talk. Inshallah, I'll try my best to be concise and right to the point. Whatever I say, inshallah, will be, if it is good from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if it is wrong and evil, that's from me and my shaitan, excuse me. So, the topic of today is an outcry to the Muslim Ummah, which is in response to what's happening in the Holy Land, in Palestine, in Palestine. It is actually not that the Al-Aqsa is burning, and it is not that the Al-Aqsa alone is under attack, and it is not only Al-Aqsa that is outcrying to the Muslims and the Muslim Ummah for some help. It is actually, as a whole, the whole land of Palestine. So the land of Palestine is under attack. Since it was occupied in 1948, or even before that, it has been outcrying to the Muslims for help. So inshallah, today we'll address it from that perspective. How is the land of Palestine, the Holy Land, is supposed to be addressed and understood by the Muslims, not only the Masjid Al-Aqsa. So to begin with, inshallah, I divided my talk into 4 or 5 main points. Point number 1 is that this is part of our Aqidah. So the land of Palestine is part of the Muslims' Aqidah. It is not only the Masjid Al-Aqsa that is part of our Aqidah alone, it is the whole land of Palestine. Number 2, we will go a little bit over how it was conquered initially, how it was opened by the Muslims, and how the Muslims took over and they ruled it. Then after that, how it was liberated after it was occupied and after it was taken by the Crusaders. Number 3, we will talk about how it was protected at one point in time, by the end of the 19th century, how the Muslims protected the land of Palestine as part of their Aqidah. And finally, we will say how we can today, in this time, how we can protect it and liberate it again as it did before. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. So it is the glory to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In translation of the meaning, it is all glory to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who had taken his servants from Al-Masjid al-Haram in the night journey, from Al-Masjid al-Haram in Mecca to the far Al-Aqsa, Al-Masjid al-Aqsa in Palestine. And it didn't stop there. It says the one that we have blessed its surrounding, that the one that it is whole vicinity and surrounding have been blessed. In this context, we understand that the land of Palestine, and actually more than the land of Palestine, is part of our Aqidah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed it to be a blessed land. The fuqaha and the scholars have already said that anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already addressed being blessed and honored is part of our Aqidah, which means that this is a responsibility of every Muslim to take care of. It is a responsibility of every Muslim to support and protect. This is not only the responsibility of the Muslims in Palestine. So it is part of our Aqidah, not only Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, because every masjid, every mosque is part of our Aqidah. It doesn't matter where it is. So every masjid is part of our Aqidah. But in response and in regards to the Holy Land, the whole Holy Land, because its surrounding and its vicinity have been blessed by the Quranic verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already connected the whole land of Palestine with our Aqidah. So it is the responsibility of all Muslims to take care of. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, there are multiple hadith that address this land and address the Masjid Al-Aqsa specifically, in addition to addressing Masjid Al-Haram and Masjid Al-Nabawi in specifications. For example, the Prophet ﷺ says that that journey and intention to go visit a masjid is not accepted. لا تشد الرحال إلا إلى 3 مساجد. So when you make an intention to go visit a masjid, that is not accepted except only in 3 cases. Number 1, Al-Masjid Al-Haram. Number 2, Al-Masjid Al-Nabawi. Number 3, Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Also, the Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith to the Sahaba, they say, oh, how beautiful your masjid is, the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, how blessed it is. He said, this masjid is honored 4 times, the prayer in it is 4 times more than the Masjid Al-Aqsa. But This is honor because I live and I reside in Medina. And I will die in Medina. That's what the Prophet said. So the honoring and the blessing of Masjid Nabawi is because I am in it. Where the Prophet never resided and never lived and never died around the Masjid Al-Aqsa. But he says that the blessing of the Masjid Al-Aqsa does not come because of me and I lived in it, because of its own blessings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed it by its own, its intrinsic blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it is Masjid Al-Aqsa. So a man will come towards the end of time that he wish he can have a few feet that look at the Masjid Al-Aqsa that would be better for him than that which the sun has risen over. So to have a place in the Holy Land, it's not in Masjid Al-Aqsa, in the Holy Land, because the addressing is the Holy Land. To have a place in the Holy Land where you can see or you can watch, where you can have a footstep in this blessed land is better to you than all of that which the sun has risen over. Also, the Prophet ﷺ addressed the Masjid Al-Aqsa to say that it is a piece of paradise on earth. He told us how. Had you seen it? They said, no, we didn't. He said, if you were to see it, it is a piece of paradise on the face of the earth. So understanding that means that this is a very important topic that we address, that the Holy Land is being blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is being connected to our aqidah. It is the responsibility of all Muslims to take care of. To go back to history a little bit, so we have to understand what happened and how Muslims took that seriously. Even though the Prophet ﷺ gave 3 glad tidings where Persia would be open, Rome would be open, and Constantinople would be open, he never gave any glad tidings that Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa would be open. Nevertheless, the Sahaba immediately after the passing of the Prophet ﷺ, at the time of Abu Bakr, started preparing the conquest so that they can go and conquer and open Masjid Al-Aqsa and its blessed land around it. So they took it more seriously than the glad tidings of the Prophet ﷺ when he gave glad tidings that Persia would be open, Rome would be open, Constantinople would be open. They took it more important and more seriously than the glad tidings given by the Prophet ﷺ, which means, as part of our aqidah, it has to stay under the control of Muslims. It has to be maintained under the rulership of the Muslims. So that's how the Sahaba took it, as serious as this. So Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu sent among the army that went to conquer and open Jerusalem and the surrounding of Masjid Al-Aqsa, among that army was the best of the Sahaba. They gave blood for them. If you had the chance to go visit, you would see their graves around the walls of Jerusalem, the old wall of Jerusalem. You would see the graves of the Sahaba, many, hundreds, if not thousands, of their graves already buried around the wall of Jerusalem. That's how the Sahaba took it seriously. So Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, make a long story short, at his time, so it was the Khalifa that was able to conquer and open Jerusalem. It was not individual Muslims. So that conquest required an organized, well-prepared, and funded army that is able to conquer and open the land of Palestine. What's interesting is that when he conquered the land of, actually in his, the Christians in Jerusalem, they had in their, I don't want to say scripture, but they had news that the one that they will give the keys to the old city of Jerusalem when it is conquered by the Muslims, that it would be Khalifa called Umar. It would be the president whose name was Umar. So they refused to submit and surrender to the army. They said, we would only surrender and give to your Khalifa, because they had specific descriptions of him, where he is just and he is sincere and he is strong and courageous and all of that. So him and his servant were riding the camel, alternatively. When it was time to get close to Jerusalem, it was the servant time to ride, and Sayyidina Umar was to lead the camel, to pull the camel. So when they saw that scene, Sayyidina Umar, the Khalifa, the one who's in charge of half of the known world at that time, he's the one who's walking and pulling the rope of the camel, and his servant is riding. They said, this is exactly the description, it matches the description we have in our scripture. So it took a righteous Khalifa, an organized army, a sincere Muslim, or Muslims that were able to conquer the blessed land of Palestine. Also after that, the Christians themselves, they asked and they required that among the covenant of Sayyidina Umar, or it's called in Arabic the Uqda Umariyya, that they're given their rights as citizens, of course, and whoever wants to leave, they can leave. They're protected, they're honored, they don't have to participate, because they're going to pay the jizya. But the one condition they put is that he does not allow the Jews to live in Jerusalem alongside with the Christians or the Muslims. So any Muslim can live, any Christian can live. But they made a condition: we will give you the key, we will surrender, but you're not allowing any Jew to come and live alongside us or the Muslims in the city of Jerusalem. That's one thing. The second thing is, they also gave the keys to the most holy church in their faith to a family of Muslims. They're entrusted with the key. They open, they maintain, they close. So the security of their most holy place is in the hand of the Muslims. This is not given to individuals. This is given to authority. This is given to a Khalifa. Because the Khalifa represents the Muslim Ummah. The Khalifa represents the ruling of Islam. The Khalifa represents the unity, the dignity, the honor that Muslims can only give if he is strong and in his post. And then time went by, going through history. Time went by where Muslims maintained that covenant and Muslims maintained the security and stability of the Holy Land. And there was no conflict, there was no wars, until one thing happened. So when the Islamic State, when the Khilafah state getting weak, it was getting fragmented. And some of the governors and some of the leaders in certain areas were breaking away and breaking off from the central authority of the Khalifa in Baghdad, the Abbasi Khilafah. So that's when the Muslims got weak. That's when the Crusaders were able to invade and take over the Holy Land. Again, that gives us a lesson. As long as the Muslims were strong, as long as we had an Islamic State that protected the honor of the Muslims, that protected that which was part of our Aqidah, nobody in the world was able to attack or occupy or challenge the security and the stability of the Holy Land being granted to the Muslims under their rulership, unless and until that post was challenged, that unity was challenged, that strength was challenged. So when the Muslims were getting weaker, were divided, were fragmented into smaller pieces, not all the pieces of the Islamic State and the Muslim countries were given pledge to the central Khilafah in Baghdad. That's when the Crusaders were able to attack and occupy the Holy Land. So, who liberated Palestine? It's Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, right? It is more than famous. But do you know that he took 21 years preparing after he became the wali, or the governor in Egypt? He was a young man. When he took that post, when he became the governor over Egypt, he realized that the Muslims have tried. They actually failed to protect and maintain that the Holy Land was under the rulership of Muslims. So they failed that. How could you liberate it if you already failed to provide security for it? So he realized that as long as we're fragmented, as long as we're divided, as long as each area calls upon itself for its own interest, there is nothing we can do as Muslims to liberate Palestine as part of our Aqidah. So he spent 21 years reunifying the Muslim armies, even though he was in Egypt. He didn't even think that I'm going to take my army and go and free Palestine. He didn't even think like that. Even though his focus was on Palestine, his focus was on Al-Aqsa, his focus was on liberating the Holy Land that is part of our Aqidah. But he took the necessary steps and he took the practical steps to make sure that in his quest to free Palestine and liberate it, he is going to be effective, influential, and achieving the goal. So number one, he started reunifying the armies of the different parts of the Muslim lands into one army. Number one. Number two, he also started to reunify the different parts of the Muslim lands to give the pledge to the central Khilafah in Baghdad. So he reunified the province of Egypt with Iraq. He reunified the province of Sham with Iraq. He reunified the province of Tunis and Aljazair, Tunisia and Algeria, which is North Africa, with the central Khilafah in Baghdad. He reunified the Arabian Peninsula and Yemen with the central authority in Baghdad. In other words, all the Muslims now give one pledge to one Khalifa. They're not anymore fragmented, working for their own whatever interest. And history narrates that he actually killed multiple of these governors who refused, because the unity of the Khilafah and to maintain and protect that post, to give one pledge to one Khalifa is far more important than one person's life and one person's interest. So after he succeeded in reunifying the different parts of the Muslim lands and reunifying the Muslim armies into one central authority under him, under his rulership. After that, he marched. And he was able to free Palestine in less than 2 years. So between he was able to reunify all the armies and he was able to free the Aqsa, Masjid Al-Aqsa, it was only 2 years. Where over 90 years, there was no Jumu'ah prayer or Jama'ah prayer or anybody or any of the Muslims were entering the Masjid Al-Aqsa. For 90 years, or 88 years to be exact, there wasn't a single Jumu'ah prayer in Masjid Al-Aqsa. So Muslims have failed for 90 years to defend their honor and protect and liberate Masjid Al-Aqsa, and he did it in 2 years. But these 2 years took another 21 years of preparation, but the right preparation. So the point is, Salahuddin Ayyubi, may Allah be pleased with him, he did not just gather his army, which was in Egypt or in Sham, and he went marching for Palestine to free Masjid Al-Aqsa. He actually reunified the different parts of the Muslim lands, reunified the different parts of the Muslim armies into one army. And then after that, he marched. So he freed Masjid Al-Aqsa in Palestine on the 27th of Rajab, 1187. 1187? Yes, 1187. And Muslims were able to protect and maintain that status, which Palestine was under the rulership of the Uthmani Khilafah, because after that, was the Uthmani Khilafah, maybe 100 or 150 years was the Uthmani Khilafah, 200 years. So the Muslims were able to maintain and protect Palestine and prevent all the, because there were multiple attacks against, we know the Mamluks and we know the Berbers, we know Qutuz and all of them, so there were attacks against the Holy Land of Palestine. But they all failed, they did not succeed because the unity of the Muslims, and of course after the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will and decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they were able to protect and maintain and keep Palestine as a free land under the rulership of the Muslims. So, moved down in history until the 19th century, the end of the 19th century. It's not anymore the Crusaders. The Crusaders, which was at that time Britain and France and the rest of the European countries, they actually had their eye not only on occupying the Muslim land in Palestine, but they had their eye on destroying the Islamic State. So they're not anymore interested per se in occupying Palestine, but they had their agents, which were the Zionists and the Jewish groups. They had their interest in giving Palestine to them because they will protect their interest. So Britain and France were planning and plotting and conspiring to destroy the Islamic State, the Uthmani Khilafah, for hundreds of years. So their focus was on destroying the Khilafah. And they had somebody else's focus on Palestine, which was the Jewish groups and the Zionist groups. So they came to Sultan Abdul Hamid al-Thani, who probably the most honorable Uthmani Khalifa after Muhammad al-Fatih. So they came to him, they offered him the wealth, they offered him the gold, they offered him, positions, they offered him to give and pay off the debt of the Islamic State at that time, the Uthmani Khilafah, because it wasn't debt, it was called the sick man, the weak man, the old man, because of hundreds of years or 100-some years of corruption and if you want interference with the European countries into the Muslim Uthmani Khilafah. So they came, they offered him wealth and money and pay the debt and all of that in exchange for Palestine. And he said, there are multiple quotes, inshallah you can read them, you can look for them. But he gave his most prominent, his most famous quote. He said that tell the Jews, or whatever his name, I'm not going to say his name, tell him to stop his attempt in acquiring Palestine. It does not belong to me. I'm giving you the context. It does not belong to me. This belongs to the Muslim Ummah. The Muslims have shed blood over this land. They have given their souls and their lives over centuries. It is their honor. It is not mine to give. It would be better for me. I would rather have a sword stab me and have the knife cut me into pieces than giving the land of Palestine to you. So rest assured that as long as there is a strong Khilafah, you will not have a foothold over Palestine. But if the Khilafah is destroyed, you will take Palestine for free. That's exactly what happened. As long as we had a Khilafah, as long as we had an Islamic State that was strong and powerful, It protected our honor, protected the honor of the Muslims, protected the Holy Land, and also elsewhere. The kuffar were not able to take any part of any of the Muslim lands. So once that was challenged again, because it was challenged when the Crusaders took over Palestine in the 11th century. 1092, that's when the Crusaders actually took over the Masjid Al-Aqsa. In year 1092, that's when they took Palestine. Because the Muslims were fragmented, they were divided. And again, history repeated itself when the Muslims were divided, when the Islamic State was weak, when it actually was destroyed, that's when the Jews took Palestine for free. So what do we learn from all of that? We actually learn one thing. If you really have a strong, powerful state, if you have a state that looks after the affairs of the Muslims, if you have a state that takes care of its belongings, and one of its belongings, not only the honor of the Muslims, but also that which is part of their aqidah, their deen, their land, their Aqsa, their Masjid Haram, their Masjid Nabawi, and every mosque there is out there, and every blood of every honorable Muslim out there, when you have a state that is strong and powerful, ruling by Quran and Sunnah, you will protect everything we have. So if we really are serious about freeing Palestine today, there's only one solution. There isn't a second. So the solution is to establish again a state. Reunify these fragmented, divided Muslim armies, over which and upon which and in charge of which is a traitor, is a hypocrite that serves the interest of the kuffar. So if we are serious about freeing Palestine, protecting the honor of the Muslims, protecting the Holy Land, and gaining back which was taken from us, and pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we really have to call upon the armies of the Muslims and work to reunify them. There's no other solution. We have to reunify the Muslim armies under the leadership of one ruler, the Khalifa. So, and you can only do that if you reunite the parts of the different Muslim lands that were fragmented, and upon which and over which is somebody who is in charge serving the interest of the kuffar. So we have to make all of these fragmented pieces into one state. That state implements the Quran and Sunnah, addresses the Muslims as its own citizens. They do not address us as individuals and foreigners. If I go to Saudi Arabia, I'm foreigner. If you go to whatever, Jordan, you're still foreigner. Maybe some of you are not, but I am. So when you have an Islamic state that will look at you as this is a citizen of the Khilafah state, of an Islamic state, even if you were non-Muslim. So we enjoy equal rights. We enjoy the rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. And we also have duties and responsibilities that were prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, if you look at the issue of Palestine, spanning through a history of almost 1400 years, it took 4 khulafa. And inshallah the 4th one is to come. It took first Khalifa to conquer it, to open it, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. And then it took another Khalifa to liberate it. It was Salah ad-Din under the rulership of the Khalifa al-Mustansir billah. So he was the army leader, but the Khalifa was al-Mustansir billah. So that's the second Khalifa. It took a third Khalifa to protect and maintain, Sultan Abdul Hamid. And inshallah, will take the very soon to be appointed Khalifa when we gather ourselves, gather our fragmented parts, and reunify the different parts of the Muslim lands, reunify the Muslim armies. Inshallah, will take that Khalifa to free Palestine again. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك. ان شاء الله, any question is more than